The disciples are seasoned fishermen, now facing a violent storm at sea. Waves crash over the small boat's bow, drenching the men. Darkness surrounds them, obscuring the horizon and any sign of land. Fear grips their hearts, raw and primal, in the face of nature's fury. They fight a losing battle against the tempestuous waves. The wind howls like a banshee, a terrifying scream in the night. The sea roars its defiance, a powerful and relentless force. Rain lashes down, blurring their vision and chilling them to the bone. The boat pitches and rolls violently, threatening to capsize at any moment. One disciple clutches the mast, his knuckles white with strain. Another bails water frantically, trying to keep the boat afloat. A third stares into the darkness, his face etched with despair. Hope seems lost as the storm intensifies, a relentless assault. Suddenly, a figure emerges from the swirling darkness. The figure walks effortlessly upon the raging water, defying gravity. Their terror intensifies, believing they are seeing a ghost. Is it an omen of their impending doom, a sign of death? The disciples huddle together, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. One whispers a prayer, his voice barely audible above the storm. Another shields his eyes, unable to bear the sight before him. The storm mirrors the chaos in their hearts, a perfect reflection. Their vulnerability against nature's fury is laid bare. The waves crash higher, the wind howls louder, the darkness deepens. Close up on a disciple's terrified face, rain streaming down. Wide shot of the small boat tossed about on the monstrous waves. The mysterious figure continues to approach, unwavering and serene. Lightning flashes, briefly illuminating the figure's form. The disciples gasp, their fear reaching a fever pitch. They are trapped, helpless against the storm and the supernatural. The boat creaks and groans under the strain of the relentless waves. The mast sways precariously, threatening to snap at any moment. The disciples cling to each other, seeking comfort in shared fear. The wind whips their hair and clothes, adding to the chaos. The sea spray stings their faces, a constant reminder of their peril. They are at the mercy of forces beyond their control, utterly helpless. Another lightning strike reveals the approaching figure more clearly. The disciples shrink back, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. The storm rages on, a symphony of destruction and despair. The boat is tossed like a toy in the hands of a giant. The disciples brace themselves for the inevitable, their faces grim. The figure draws closer, its presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. The disciples can now make out details of the figure's form. Is it a man, a ghost, or something else entirely? Their minds reel, unable to comprehend what they are witnessing. The storm continues its relentless assault, testing their limits. The disciples are pushed to the brink of despair, their faith wavering. They cry out for help, their voices lost in the roar of the storm. The figure stops a short distance from the boat, its gaze fixed on them. The disciples hold their breath, waiting for the unknown. The storm seems to intensify, as if responding to the figure's presence. The boat rocks violently, threatening to throw them into the sea. The disciples cling to the boat, their grip tightening with fear. The figure raises a hand, a gesture of power or warning. The disciples cower, expecting the worst. The storm reaches its peak, a crescendo of chaos and destruction. The disciples are at the breaking point, their spirits crushed. They close their eyes, waiting for the end. The figure remains motionless, a silent observer in the storm. The disciples brace for impact, their bodies tense with fear. The storm rages, their fate hangs in the balance, unknown. The figure walks on the water, approaching the terrified disciples in their storm-tossed boat. Close up on a disciple's face, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. The wind howls, and the waves crash against the boat, threatening to capsize it. A clear, strong voice cuts through the storm's roar. "Take courage." "It is I," Jesus calls out, his figure now clearer in the darkness. Peter, ever impulsive, leans forward, peering into the storm. "Lord, if it's you," Peter shouts over the wind. "Tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus smiles gently, his eyes filled with compassion. "Come," Jesus replies, his voice carrying across the waves. Peter hesitates for a moment, glancing at the raging sea. He takes a deep breath, a flicker of determination in his eyes. Peter climbs over the side of the boat, one leg dangling precariously. He steps out onto the water, his foot making contact with the surface. For a heartbeat, he stands on the water, defying gravity. A look of amazement spreads across Peter's face. He takes another step, and then another, walking towards Jesus. The other disciples watch in stunned silence from the boat. Peter's eyes are fixed on Jesus, his faith unwavering. The wind whips around him, and the waves surge beneath his feet. He continues to walk, his pace quickening with excitement. Suddenly, Peter glances down at the turbulent water. He sees the waves crashing around his feet, the wind intensifying. Doubt begins to creep into his mind, an insidious whisper. "What am I doing?" Peter thinks, his confidence faltering. He feels the water swirling around his ankles, pulling him down. Fear grips his heart, overwhelming his faith. His steps become unsteady, his balance lost. He begins to sink, the water rising above his knees. Panic sets in, his eyes widening in terror. He struggles to stay afloat, but the waves are too strong. The water reaches his waist, then his chest. He cries out in desperation, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reaches out his hand towards Peter. His strong hand grasps Peter's arm, pulling him upwards. Peter gasps for air, his face pale with fear. Jesus lifts him out of the water, supporting him firmly. They stand together on the water, the storm raging around them. Jesus looks at Peter with a mixture of concern and disappointment. "You of little faith," Jesus says gently. "Why did you doubt?" Jesus and Peter walk back towards the boat, side by side. The disciples reach out to help them back into the boat. As Jesus steps into the boat, a profound stillness descends. The wind ceases its howling, and the waves calm instantly. The storm is gone, replaced by a serene calm. The disciples stare at Jesus in awe and wonder. Close up on Jesus' face, radiating peace and authority. The disciples bow their heads in reverence. One disciple whispers, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The boat floats peacefully on the calm sea. The moon emerges from behind the clouds, casting a silver glow. The disciples look at each other, their fear replaced by faith. Peter looks down, ashamed of his doubt, but grateful for Jesus' help. He understands the power of faith and the danger of doubt. The disciples begin to understand the true nature of Jesus. They realize that with him, anything is possible. The camera pans up to the sky, showing the vastness of the universe. A sense of hope and peace fills the air. Peter sank, the waves crashing over his head, pulling him down into the depths. He flailed, his arms reaching for anything, any hope of salvation. "Lord, save me," he cried out, his voice barely audible above the storm. Jesus instantly reached out, his hand a beacon in the watery chaos. His strong grip clasped Peter's hand, pulling him upward with divine strength. Peter gasped for air, his eyes wide with relief and lingering fear. Jesus lifted Peter above the waves, supporting him with unwavering power. "You of little faith," Jesus said gently, his eyes filled with compassion. "Why did you doubt?" he questioned, his voice calm amidst the storm. Together, Jesus and Peter walked back towards the small, tossing boat. The disciples watched in awe, their faces illuminated by the faint light. As Jesus stepped back into the boat, a profound stillness descended. The wind ceased its howling, the angry gusts fading into a gentle breeze. The waves calmed, their violent peaks smoothing into gentle ripples. The storm, both external and internal, began to dissipate completely. Dark clouds parted, revealing glimpses of the moon and stars above. The disciples stared in disbelief, witnessing the miraculous transformation. The boat, once tossed and battered, now floated peacefully on the water. A sense of profound peace settled over the weary fishermen. They looked at Jesus, their hearts filled with a newfound reverence. They recognized the divine authority that resided within him, the power that could command the very elements of nature, the grace that extended even to those who doubted and faltered. One disciple whispered, "Truly, this is the Son of God." Another nodded in agreement, his eyes filled with awe and wonder. Peter, humbled and ashamed, lowered his head in repentance. He understood the depth of his lack of faith in that moment. He also understood the boundless mercy and love of Jesus. The storm had tested them, pushed them to the brink of despair. But it had also revealed the true power of faith and divine intervention. They learned that true faith could overcome any fear, any obstacle. Even the most formidable storms must bow before the presence of God. The memory of the storm would forever be etched in their minds, a reminder of their vulnerability and God's unwavering protection. The disciples began to pray, their voices filled with gratitude. They thanked God for his mercy, his power, and his unwavering love. They committed themselves to strengthening their faith, banishing doubt. They knew that with God, all things were possible, even walking on water. The boat sailed on, guided by the gentle breeze and the light of the stars. The disciples were changed, their hearts filled with a new understanding. They had faced the storm and emerged stronger, more faithful than before. The experience had forged a deeper bond between them and Jesus. They knew that they could face any challenge with him by their side. The night grew old, and the first light of dawn began to appear. The storm was a distant memory, replaced by the promise of a new day. The disciples continued their journey, their hearts filled with hope. They knew that they were not alone, that God was always with them. The sun rose, painting the sky with vibrant colors of orange and gold. The sea sparkled, reflecting the beauty of the new day. The disciples smiled, their faces radiant with joy and peace. They had weathered the storm and found faith amidst the chaos. Their journey continued, guided by faith and the love of God. The boat moved steadily towards the distant shore. Each disciple reflected on the night's events. They understood the importance of unwavering faith. They knew doubt could lead to sinking, both literally and figuratively. They resolved to trust in Jesus, no matter the circumstances. The storm had been a harsh lesson, but a valuable one. They were grateful for the experience, despite its terrors. They knew their faith had been tested and strengthened.